everyone, welcome to my phrasal verb series. Today we are going to learn the phrasal verb call for and learn it in a story. So why is it so important to learn phrasal verbs? Well, I kid you not when I say that native English speakers always use phrasal verbs in almost every sentence. It is almost ridiculous how often we use phrasal verbs, which is why it's so important to learn them, because it really helps bridge that gap between intermediate and advanced English. It kind of puts it together, and using them and knowing them really makes you sound more advanced in your English. And the best way to learn a phrasal verb is through context, through stories, and knowing exactly when to use them, when it's appropriate to use them. And so that is what we're going to do. We're going to read the story about a family who is moving, so it can be a very relatable story if you have moved in the past, but we're going to use the phrasal verb call for many times. And what does call for mean? Call for means when you make a request for something, or when something is needed, or when something is a demand. And so you can call for a pizza, right? Like you make the call for a pizza. Or you can call for some more support in your team at work. Like there's some things that you can call for, which means that you can request or make a demand for it. So let's see how we can use that in our story. And before we read the story, I just wanted to remind you that this is a more advanced story, so there are some vocabulary words that are a little tricky. So in the description, I made a list of some of the words that you're going to hear. And so just so you can follow along a little bit easier, they have their definitions there. All right, so here is our story. Once upon a time, in the peaceful town of Willowbrook, there lived a family called the Andersons. For years, they had enjoyed the serenity of their cozy home nestled amidst lush greenery. However, circumstances called for a change, and the Andersons found themselves embarking on a significant journey, moving to a bustling city. The decision to move had come as a result of Mr. Anderson's promotion at work. His new role called for a relocation to the company's headquarters, an opportunity he just couldn't pass up. The entire family understood that this move was necessary for Mr. Anderson's career advancement and the betterment of their lives. As the moving day approached, Mrs. Anderson called for a family meeting to discuss the logistics and responsibilities involved in the process. They had to call for a moving company to handle the transportation of their belongings. They researched various companies, comparing prices and services, and finally settled on one that came highly recommended. On the day of the move, a large moving truck arrived at their home, manned by a team of efficient movers. The Andersons watched their cherished possessions as they were carefully loaded onto the truck. It was a bittersweet moment as their beloved home, filled with countless memories, slowly emptied. With their belongings packed away, the Andersons bid farewell to their familiar surroundings. As they embarked on the journey to their new city, a mixture of excitement and apprehension filled the air. The road trip called for breaks to stretch their legs, grab a bite to eat, and rejuvenate before continuing their journey. Upon reaching their new city, the Andersons drove through unfamiliar streets, searching for their new home. They had already called for a real estate agent to help them find a suitable place to live. The agent, Mr. Johnson, welcomed them with a smile and a list of potential homes that met their specifications. The Andersons spent days visiting various properties, carefully considering each one. They wanted a place that would call for a sense of belonging, where they would envision their future and create new memories. Finally, they found their perfect home, a charming house with a spacious backyard and a cozy fireplace that called for family gatherings. Settling into their new home called for a lot of effort. Mrs. Anderson called for a handyman to fix any minor repairs, ensuring that everything was in proper working order. They also called for an internet service provider to set up their connection, as staying connected to the world was essential in this digital age. The community in their new neighborhood called for a warm welcome. The Andersons introduced themselves to their neighbors, who graciously offered help and guidance. They joined a local organization and attended community events, feeling a sense of belonging that called for involvement and connection. As time passed, the Andersons called for a family meeting once again. They reflected on their experiences since the move and discussed the adjustments they needed to make. They acknowledged that embracing change and building new relationships called for an open mind and a willingness to adapt. In their new city, Mr. Anderson's job called for longer hours and increased responsibilities. The demands of his position sometimes called for late nights and business trips, but he was determined to provide for his family and seize the opportunities that came his way. The Anderson children called for new schools and educational experiences. They enrolled in a nearby school that offered a diverse curriculum and a range of extracurricular activities. The children embraced the chance to make new friends, broadening their perspectives and learning from different cultures and backgrounds. Over time, the Andersons' new city called for a deep sense of belonging. They became actively involved in local charity events, volunteering their time and resources to support causes that resonated with them. They realized that making a positive impact in their community called for an active participation and giving back. All right, so that is our story about the Andersons moving into a new home in a new big bustling city. And if you have the same experience, I would love to know if you went through the same emotions, the same feelings as them. Write it down in the comments down below so I can check it out. But I know that I felt this way when I was moving into a new home, into a new country in Peru, that I definitely felt that excitement, but also anxiety of moving and also having to meet new people, so I can understand this bit. Now, again, what you're trying to focus on in this story is understanding how called for, the phrasal verb call for, is being used. And so go back to the story a couple times. You can see how many times it's being used, because in this story it was used a lot, and also understand how they were using it. So they called for movers, they called for a new dynamic, they called for many things. And so try to figure out all the things that they called for in this story, so that you know how to use it in real life in conversations, okay? Like I said before, phrasal verbs are so important to get from intermediate English to advanced English. It kind of helps bridge these two together. Now, what you can do to also be more advanced in English is to have a proper schedule, a proper roadmap to help you get from here to here. And so for that reason, I've created an entirely free document for you. It's the first link down in the description box, but essentially it's just a document for you to really surround yourself with English, be able to find the best times in your life to practice English every day, to be consistent in English so that you can be advanced. It is totally possible. Now, let's keep going on with our phrasal verbs. Here is the next one just over here. Click on this link right here.